So with that, join me in welcoming our guest speaker, Miss Natalie Cofield, Assistant Administrator of the Office of Women's Business Ownership. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you, Jamie.
Great. Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everybody. So excited to see you all here. There'll be folks dropping in as we continue the programming for today, but we're just so excited to be able to make the connection with SBA and reconnect. I want to first just thank Natalie and Jackson, as well as Allison, for being here today. And I'll just share a little bit of a biography about Natalie and just, and excuse me, I'm kind of fangirling right now. So I'm just going to take it down and breathe. So Miss Natalie Cofield has been appointed to serve as the Assistant Administrator for the Office of Women's Business Ownership. In the role, Natalie serves as Senior Executive, providing oversight for management, leadership, and championship of female entrepreneurship. As the Assistant Administrator, Cofield will oversee the largest expansion of the Women's Business Center, the WBC network, in the history of the Small Business Administration, across nearly 140 centers and more than $70 million in federal grant-making support for the growth of women-led firms. Cofield is a seasoned entrepreneur and executive with over 15 years of experience in securing diverse capital, building strategic partnerships, and leading state and local economic development programs to successfully incubate and scale small business development and expansion initiatives in communities throughout the U.S. Cofield brings extensive experience leading business and trade associations and working with corporations and philanthropic organizations to develop programs to support entrepreneurship within women-led, diverse, and urban communities, and is responsible for securing for over $22 million in capital to invest in entrepreneurial ventures and small business programs and initiatives. Most recently, she served as founder and CEO of Walker's Legacy and the Walker's Legacy Foundation, providing entrepreneurship programming to support thousands of multicultural women entrepreneurs. She's been named by Entrepreneur Magazine one of the 100 most powerful women in business, and The Root named her one of the 100 most influential African Americans in the country. And she's also been named among the list of women who mean business and one of the 100 most powerful Washingtonians by the Washington Business Journal. She's a graduate of Howard University, where she received her BBA in Information Systems as a Gates Millennium Scholar, and a Baruch School of Public Affairs, where she was a National Urban Fellow. She's a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Thank you so much, Natalie. I am just overwhelmed with joy to welcome you, and thank you for all your contribution that you've just done to shine a light on women of color, and support women entrepreneurship. So just want to welcome you. And if anyone wants to come off and just say welcome off the mic here or off mute, please welcome Natalie. Thank you.
Jamie, thank you so much for that great introduction. I have my own fangirl moment with you all as well. I'd love to share this story of how I actually became aware of Native Women Lead. And it was through the initial kind of conference that you all had many years ago. And there was this entire kind of Twitter storm that was happening about supporting Native and Indigenous women entrepreneurs. And there was an entire GoFundMe campaign or some type of crowdfunding campaign. And I remember one of my advisory board members at the time, Natalia Madeira, was really, really championing and pushing. And I was like, this is so incredible that these women are doing this and that they're convening and that they're having this. And I want to figure out a way to support this. And that probably was like 6 or 7 years ago. When was that first conference that you all had?
2018, and Natalie was there with us.
Yes. Yes. So it's like, just so incredible to find new ways to engage and support your platform, the work that all of you all are doing who are on this call, and to just say, we see you and we stand in solidarity with you. So I just wanted to say that because I also am a fangirl and I'm very supportive of everything that you all have continued to keep doing.
Thanks, Natalie. Appreciate you. Yeah, that was a magical moment. I think what we learned with our community is the power of convening, the power of being able to lean into community with one another and to see ourselves in each other, to look at the stage and see folks that are in the audience here, like Gina, you, April, and Stephanie Poston, and just like, wow, she did it. She like started a business and she's doing that full time. That's her work. That's her life. And she's doing what she loves. So it was definitely a moment in her story.
Love it.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. And folks, anybody who wants to ask questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. We'll track it throughout the event. But Natalie, can you share just a little bit about the work that you're doing at SBA? And just, I'm really curious about, with all the wealth of knowledge and the experience that you brought in founding an organization and leading an organization, how has that influenced and shaped the vision for what you hope to do within SBA today?
Yeah. So I think all of us on this call have been in situations where we had incredible ideas and didn't always have all of the resources. But one thing about women is that we're steadfast and we work hard to get it done despite the circumstances. And I was blessed to be able to come into SBA at a time where this administration and the administrator, Isabella Castillas Guzman, have been very intentional about ensuring that equity is at the forefront of the agenda. And that was something that was near and dear to me and sits true to my heart. And so with that type of intentionality, you can really move mountains and you really can make things happen, whether you have the resources immediately or not. And we've seen what this looks like. And so I'm proud to say that we've expanded the Women's Business Center network across the country now to 141 women's business centers. We have a women's business center in every state in the United States of America. This is something that we just did together in 2022. It was long overdue, but we're here now, right? And the last place that the last funding announcement that we did was in Alaska. And Alaska also has a very sizable Native American and Indigenous community there, and it will be located in Anchorage. And we are very excited about and hopeful for the connections that will be made to support encouraging more Native American women to go into the space of entrepreneurship. My office also serves as a champion and advocate for women entrepreneurs across the entire spectrum, providing voice for us, seats at the table, and just ensuring that the WBC or the concept of women entrepreneurs is not something that's an afterthought. And I'm joined by my colleague, Jackson Brossi, who is an advocate, supporter of the women's agenda, and he is a proud champion of the Native American and Indigenous community, leading the Office of Native American Affairs. And he can attest that I don't think there's any call that I'm not shouting out women and promoting women's initiatives. And that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do. And I'm proud to do it. This isn't something that kind of comes secondary to me. It actually is in the DNA of what I've been doing with my career for the last 20 years. And so when we look at things like being able to put funding opportunities out for more centers across the country, I look forward to being able to do more to support our Indigenous and Native communities and tribal communities across the country who deserve to have more readily available access to support women's entrepreneurial endeavors. And this is something that's forthcoming that Jackson and I are looking forward to partnering and collaborating on. So I'll just say, stay tuned for that. But also to be a part of establishing a community navigator pilot program, which was also intentional about ensuring that in the selection of the 51 grantees, that we had Native and tribal communities at the table and being awarded a part of what, is the American Rescue Plan's intentionality around ensuring that no community was left behind. So those are just a few of the things that I'm excited about. Those are the things that get me up and literally on the road, driving across country, having the chance. I see Diane from Idaho on. We had a great kickoff for her Community Navigator Initiative, which included a number of tribal communities as well. So, we have a network of women's business centers that are engaging with Native women, but we can continue to do more. And I look forward to doing that with each and every one of you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How does one get in contact with Women's Business Summer, or just kind of lean into that community, and what could they find in those spaces?
Yeah, and I think, Jamie, when we were first chatting, I think, the power of having community is entrepreneurship can be very challenging. I mean, it can be dependent upon your partnerships, like marriage, too, right? You pick the right or wrong partner and you have a whole different type of experience with this, right? So that can also feel lonely, even if you have a co-founder or a partner with you. If you're going it alone, it can be a lonely journey. You are emotionally invested in this. You are financially invested in this. Your reputation is invested in this. And so people can find themselves in lots of different iterations, depending upon what the circumstances are, right? Any entrepreneur that doesn't have a story about having to get up again, to me, I'm always like, I don't know if you're really an entrepreneur, because I know I was pushed to the ground, kicked to the ground, and I had to keep finding ways to get back up. And all of us are like that. You hear these no's before you can even part your lip. No, that someone is saying no just by even the way that they're looking at you when you're trying to talk to them. And it's like, you have to be persistent enough to keep moving past that. But community helps you do that, because here's the reality. You're not alone in that experience. And that's where most folks, and since I'm talking to my sisters here, most women give up, is that they feel that they're the only ones going through that experience. They're the only ones that are being continuously told no. They're the only ones that are not being taken seriously. And they're afraid to share their experience with someone else for fear that, someone may say, oh, I knew she wasn't really serious about her business, or see, I told you it wasn't really a good idea. But when you have things like Native Women Lead, you have community, you have our women's business centers. This is where you should find sisterhood in the transformational experience that is birthing a business, i.e., becoming an entrepreneurial mama. I mean, this is really what we're doing here, folks, right?
Yeah.
So, this is your space to share, to provide, to invest, to receive. And so, leading the Women's Business Center network, I would say, first and foremost, find a women's business center in a community near you. And you can do that on SBA.gov. And whether it be physically in person, or like we're doing today, engaging with them virtually, which many of them offer virtual programs, that's another way. But showing up as you have today for yourself, and in turn, the strength of what Native Women Lead represents, is another way to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalie. I really appreciate your passion. I resonate with that. We're like birthing multiple things, like Indigenous economies, or closing the racial wealth gap. We're looking at pay equity issues, and essentially trying to build a community for ourselves that are representative of us. And on that note, I know, hey, Jackson, welcome, by the way. Sorry. Resourcing is so critical, I think, from what I'm learning is, as I navigated the pandemic, just like many of us did, mental health definitely took a toll, just not only as an individual, but collectively. But resourcing really came up, and why it's so important to resource yourself. And I think oftentimes, as you spoke around that lonely journey of entrepreneurship and being able to lean into community, how, I guess, with the SBA, how are you all trying to connect with entrepreneurs where they're at in their journey? So we have a huge diversity of entrepreneurs that are pre-startup, startup, established, or even emerging, coming from that startup to that established kind of space. How are you looking to meet them at their journey where they're at? And is there a point in their journey where they probably most fit with SBA?
Is that for Jamie, me, or for
Oh,
Jeff?
sorry, for either one.
Okay, I'll start, and then Jackson, I think this is a great opportunity for you to share a lot of the work that you are doing. So SBA is here for you at every stage, first and foremost, from idea to multi-million-dollar contracts. All of these things come through the Small Business Administration. So whether you want to go into one of our SBDCs, our women's business centers, our VBOC centers, connect with a SCORE advisor to just talk about what you're thinking of starting, you have space to do that. We're here for you. If you're thinking of competing for federal government contract opportunities and want to know, what is this certification thing? What does this mean? A certificate of what? What do you mean women-owned small business? What do I need for that? You can go into, again, one of our centers to gain access to that, and that's managed through our Office of Government Contracting and Business Development. Now, many of our certification programs do have a requirement that you have demonstrated a capacity in business, which is typically anywhere from a year to 2 years worth of business operation. But I encourage everyone to start exploring, upon formation, ways in which you may be able to do business with the government, right? So the government is the largest procurer in the world, the US federal government more specifically, and they make everything. I oftentimes share a story about a woman that I had at a roundtable who had a undergarment company. She sold lingerie to Macy's. And when we had her at a government contracting forum, she was like, well, what am I doing here? I sell lingerie. I don't sell, things the government would want. Well, yeah, she did, actually. She ended up providing undergarments for folks in the armed forces, for folks in the military, people who are a part of federal systems and centers that had to receive these things, and the government paid for them. And so, I always encourage folks to think of yourself as the business owner, and then also think of the federal government as a business as well. And how would you be selling to them, not thinking of them as a government, but certification gives you the license to hunt that you need to be able to go into the door and be more competitive when you go there. And just recently, SBA added 700 new NAICS codes, almost 750, to the list of what one can be considered as for a women-owned small business, which makes women more competitive. And I mean, this is everything from cattle rearing to computer science contracts, right? So there's a whole spectrum there. And I want you all to think about that. Then when you get ready for capital, you can go to a CDFI or a financial institution, because SBA provides financial capital that's backed by the government to a number of different, more than 5,000 financial intermediaries, everything from PayPal to Wells Fargo and everything in between, to help you get there. And some of these programs are also designed for people who have been declined for other forms of traditional lending from those same institutions. So they may say, hey, we can't do a commercial lending with you, but we've got this government-backed program that you may be eligible for because you received a declination from us over here. That could be at the startup, or again, you're going for financing for your multi-million-dollar business level. So I say this, you get in the game, when you start a business, get in the game immediately, and do not be intimidated by the space in which you walk in, because you always want to be thinking about your growth 2 or 3 steps before you need to get there, because you don't want to show up and need it immediately and then have to spend a year or 6 months trying to get prepared for something that you could even be exposing yourself to a year or 6 months ahead of time. And SBA and our resource partners are there for you along the way. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Jackson so he can talk more specifically about initiatives that he's working on in his office to recognize and address the challenges and disparities that remain prevalent amongst Native and Indigenous communities' access to things like capital and contracts.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Natalie. Jamie, for inviting me. Jackson Brossi in this year. Twoik linear in this Lindo Belagane buses chin, but on the does it che. No Belagane doesn't. Look, yes, and I'm happy to be here and really happy to help out Native women, especially those that are interested in business and in entrepreneurship, however, wherever I can. And so that's why I'm here, and I'm not here to kind of tell folks what to do. But as far as bringing resources to the table, the SBA, I'm really happy about where we are with the SBA right now. Natalie mentioned our boss, the administrator, Isabella Guzman. And Isabella Guzman is really prioritized women business owners and also Native American business owners. And she has elevated the Office of Women-Owned Business to report directly to the administrator. And we're going to announce that she's elevated the Office of Native American Affairs to report directly to her. And I guess the inside baseball, that's very that speaks volumes to where her priorities are. And we also went to the Navajo Reservation where I'm from, and we went to Window Rock last month. And it was the first time a sitting administrator had ever gone to the Navajo Nation, the largest tribe in the country. And I won't. I'll stop there, but I know there's lots of Navajo folks on here who feel good. But anyway, it's good to be here. It's good to see some friends here, and it's good coming here from the Native CD5 background. It's good to see folks like Shalyn, who is part of the Community Navigators, one of our hubs. And so getting back to, I guess, where we are with the SBA and where we are now, we have also an unprecedented connection with Native-led organizations at the SBA. And that's primarily through this Community Navigators pilot program. We have a great hub partner called OISA Corporation, which I'm sure a lot of folks here know OISA, and Crystal and Fern, who are leading up that organization. They have 25 partners that the SBA has assisting with. And then I know our friends from Idaho are also partners, and we have some folks in Wyoming that are also Native CDFIs. So Natives, getting back to what the SBA can help out with that access to capital. And then the question about government contracting. So yes, government contracting is the federal government is the biggest procurer of goods and services in the world. And there are programs for Native-owned individual firms. There are programs for tribally owned firms, and there's a program called 8A that Natalie spoke about that the SBA manages certification, and we want to grow that program. And there are some really great examples of Native women entrepreneurs that have really made an impact. And I want to shout out to a few that we had a panel with recently. So Clara, who's also used to work with the SBA, she has a company called Strongbow Strategies, and they're doing great things in the 8A program. There's a lady named Monica from New Mexico. Yeah. And Natalie invited her to a panel on Natalie's Women's Business Summit, and she's doing great things in the 8A program in New Mexico. And we also did a panel with Tribal Tech, which is led by Vicky, and another great organization. So there are great people doing good things, but we want to increase that. And not only does the SBA help with that, the Department of Defense also has some programs to help build folks up and get them ready to do things like register their businesses on sam.gov, et cetera. So I guess one quick thing in the chat, someone mentioned Buy Indian. And so Buy Indian is a program with the Department of Interior and the HHS. Well, right now it's a IHS, Indian Health Service. And that is a program where the Indian Health Service and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and now happy to say the Department of Interior, are supposed to have a target of buying Native-owned companies. And happy to say the Department of Interior is expanding from just the BIA to the broader Department of Interior to buy these. to answer the question of how you would, you'd have to coordinate with the BIA, and right now they're coming out with the rules, and so I don't have the specifics on that, but I just wanted to touch on that. That's also important too. But it's a really exciting time. Thanks.
Awesome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I know there's a ton of programs within SBA, lots of funding opportunities. We here at Native Women Lead have actually created our own funding mechanisms because we often see that a lot of our own community cannot access traditional finance and capital. So just when Jackson was talking about all the different opportunities, I kind of wanted to go back to that conversation around access to capital. And just to set some context and framing, we actually have launched a couple of different lending programs just to essentially catalyze folks to get people, I guess, essentially financed. What we hope to do is we hope that we can get them in a position to where they can then have these on-ramps into SBA, access 8A, maybe find to participate in the mentor protege program, or even like be a government contractor. And just to kind of give you some context, I had my notes here, I apologize. We actually, by June, Native Women Lead will have funded $500,000 to Indigenous women entrepreneurs at all parts of their journey. We've had over 150 applications thus far through our 3 lending programs. We're only going to be able to probably fund about 60 total. Our loans are anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 at a 0 to 5% interest rate. And we're seeing phenomenal businesses. We're seeing food-based businesses, beauty companies, folks that are doing therapy, home healthcare, farming, people that are in arts and culture, as well as construction, and consultants that are, doing phenomenal things. And I'm wondering, I'm trying to just I feel like there's a somewhat of a disconnect, and I want to support our organization, to support SBA, to support our community members, to all align in some way. And I'm wondering, what can we do as an organization and to our community here as well to get folks ready? Because I think, Jackson, you had mentioned, and Natalie too, a couple of things, like there's a lot of money coming through, like small business, SSBCI money coming through the states and through tribes, ARP through the tribe. There's the navigators. I guess my bigger question to both of you is, how does Native Women Lead prep our community to be ready for those dollars? And how does our community be ready for those dollars to access that?
So this is a great question. And I think it goes back to a point that I made earlier, which is being in the room. And a lot of times these conversations are being had from legislation, right? About where funds will end up going, how funds will be distributed. And depending upon the circumstances, by the time they get to an agency, either a program is being developed for them or they're almost already exhausted, right? So this is about, what does it take to get in the room, 1, and 2, your ducks in a row, so that when you're in the room, you're ready to play. And I always tell people, at the end of the day, when you get ready to apply for college, you know what you need. You need your SAT or your ACT, you have your essays, you have your letters of recommendation, and you fill out the common application. It just is what it is. And you do it for every school that you want to go to. And after you do it for one school, you start realizing, oh, these questions are similar to the other school's questions. I could tweak my essay just a little bit. I don't have to start from scratch. That's the same way that it goes with things like having your financial documentation in order, having your legal structure documentation in order, having your tax documentation in order. When you go to get access to capital, they're going to ask you for that. When you go to get yourself prepared for certification, they're going to ask you for that. And when you get yourself prepared to go after a contract, they're going to ask you for those things. Those are the inevitable formalities. Those are your college applications. You're not getting in without doing that. So let's make it easier on ourselves and develop our own little standardized packet of where we have everything. Trust me, I've been on the other side of this, and I was like scrambling to find my LLC papers, and like, oh my God, they asked for the operating agreement. I'm like having an anxiety attack about that. I'm like, you know what? I'll do this tomorrow. Tomorrow turns into next week. But you know what? Let's change and reframe that. Let's work on one component of each of these required documents a week. So if you go look at what it takes to be an 8A right now, they're going to ask you for your financial documentation. They're going to ask you for you to fill out a common application. They're going to ask you to submit a statement that justifies why you feel that you are in a socioeconomic circumstance that qualifies you to be considered eligible for 8A certification. They're going to ask you for your operating and legal formation documentation. And hey, if a sole proprietor, you don't have to have operating agreements and legal documentations for that. You can just say, I am a sole proprietor. So again, don't stress out. Don't have a panic attack when you see that, like woo-saw it. And then like, okay, I don't need that. Trust me, like I said, I literally have been on this side. And you get these packets that have like hundreds of pages with proposal responses. But let's go back to this piece. So bite size it. Check one thing a week. I got that done. Another thing a week. I got that done. Another thing a week. I got that done. And by the time you get to the 9 or 10 required documents, again, might take you 3 months to get there. Might take you 3 months to get all your documents in a row. You may have to invest in getting the accountant. In fact, I would advise you to do that. So you have your documentation and you have your financial records in a way that you can read them and that others can read them. Once you get this standard application ready to go, oh, I'm telling you, it's going to start the application program for application process for you for many of these things is going to start sliding. Now, that doesn't mean business is going to start sliding. Those are two different situations. You getting the documentation you need for certifications in a row and then getting certified is one thing. That does not mean that the business is about to start falling from the sky for your business. You have to go out and hunt. You have to go out and hunt. All you are getting is the license to hunt. Okay, but you still want that. You want to have access to the capital to purchase the equipment that you need to go out for a hunt. And you have to have your ducks in a row in order for you to do that. So I would say today, if this is something you are interested in doing, go to sba.gov and look at and download the entire packet. And then put your plan together that says, this week I'm going to focus on X. Next week, I'm going to focus on Y. And have an accountability circle, your sister circle. That's where, again, Native Women Lead and your women's business centers come into play of people who are going to hold you accountable to get it done. And when it comes to government contract responses, which I also did, I would print the whole thing out. Print it out. I wear glasses now. Print the whole thing out. And I would pick up my highlighter and I would go and read the document. And I would highlight things that they ask for. And then I would put that in my little structure when I put I would just say, my response to, or how we address X, because I saw that they said that that's what they wanted. But I only saw that they said that because I read it and I highlighted it. This is the hunting piece. This is the waiting in the bushes and learning the technique of the hunt. This is what that is. You don't just walk out there in a bright orange suit like, hey, that's not what happens. You have a technique and a formula. And the first thing you do is you print it out and you review it. And then you also put yourself in spaces and places where the game is also being done through proper documentation, but also through social capital and relationships. You have to come from behind the computer and show up at events and show up to hear what's happening next. Because a lot of times by the time it hits the paper, the idea is already there. Okay, I know I've said a lot of words here, but I know anyone who's truly felt the way I felt, where you had an anxiety attack about going to get a loan, had an anxiety attack about submitting a proposal, looked at something and thought, oh my God, I can't do this when I've got this, I got to feed the kids. It's just, you know exactly what I'm talking about when I say bite size it. That's how we can get prepared today.
Thank you, Natalie. Now we're hunters. We're hunters. I know there's a couple questions in chat. I know Steph Poston, who's a co-founder and also definitely on her SBA journey, asked, what is the wait time once a full 8A packet has been submitted? And then she also posed another question in here. I can't, sorry, Steph. Do you all support people as they're navigating that package, or like the bite sizing within SBDC or women's business centers? Can folks come along with folks on the journey as they're like getting?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm telling you, it all starts with printing it out.
Okay,
and then just knowing what you need to do. Mm-hmm.
Thanks. Let's see, Tata, you had asked a question here in the chat. Are the 8A requirements of the 215 income and 2 years plus business still at bay that had been in the COVID moratorium?
So 8A requirements, the income requirements are that you can't have a net worth of more than $750,000. So it's a net worth. It's not your business can't make more than 250,000. It's a net worth of more than 750. So you take your home loan, your home mortgage, your car, all that, you add what you make in income and how much your business pays you, and then you get your net worth. So if you're still below that, you're eligible to apply for the 8A program. And the 8A is not on moratorium. What happened during COVID was that the 8A program was given an additional extension year, because essentially you had a year where you couldn't hunt. So SBA understood and acknowledged that and added additional time to the graduation timeframe for the 8A program. But I would say 8A program is responsible for creating some of the most diverse millionaire entrepreneurs this country has ever seen. And all of you all have the ability to be duplicitous in your certification. You can be 8A and women-owned certified if you own more than 51% of your business. And why would we not want more artillery? And again, as I said, the common application is the same, essentially.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you. And I also want to just share with folks, in my previous life, I was a lender, and we would often at the CDFI that I worked at, the Community Development Financial Institution, which SBA works with a lot of them, right? Including the native ones. I think Jackson had spoke to that earlier. Oftentimes I challenge this whole thing around collateral, because a lot of folks live in native communities, do not have collateral that they can leverage. I couldn't use my car or even my home because banks wouldn't want to do business on Indian country, in Indian land. Now, how does the SBA loans kind of offset that? Because it sounded like SBA guarantee almost guarantees the loan, so long as the entrepreneur meets, I guess, the lending requirements of the financial institution. Like SBA kind of backs it. Is that right?
Yeah, so SBA backs it, but I will tell you, and I'll be very honest, I don't know enough about the particulars of the collateral and tribal land, so I would defer either to Jackson or that we can get back to you on that question, because I think it's a great one. And I think the fact that you're asking it also continues to elevate why conversations like this are important, because it gives space for a circumstance that I up until you just mentioned it, I wasn't even aware of, right? So Jackson, I don't know if you have a comment on that, but if not, we can get back to them on that.
I do, and yeah, thank you, Jamie, for flagging that. I think there are some challenges around our more traditional SBA lending products, and I've noticed that coming from the background of having worked in native CDFIs. When we went into the pandemic, as far as native CDFI loan funds, there were only 2 native CDFI loan funds that were certified as what we called 7A lenders in that program, even though we had 70, well, as far as loan funds, we had about 50 loan funds and 70 native CD5s across the country. So there's a whole lot of room for growth there. And another kind of challenge that we've had is you have to provide proof of income via IRS tax returns. And I know that somebody flagged that for in the chat, but yeah, you need 2 years of tax returns for 8A certification, but you need tax returns to apply for a PPP loan. You need a tax returns to apply for things like COVID EIDL. And I know that there are tribes across the country that have treaties, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, where they gave up lots and lots of land that's worth, they'd be billionaires now. But in exchange, when they didn't have much of a choice, the federal government said, you can continue to fish here, and whatever money you make from that, you do not have to pay taxes on that. So we have some challenges there. We recognize them. And if you will be at the Reservation Economics Summit, we will be holding a listening session around challenges to access to capital. And we're going to take that information that we get there, and also we'll put something together online. So this is still not 100% announced, but it will be. And we want to invite both individuals, organizations, and of course, tribes to share their information so that we're able to best help serve Native businesses and Native women businesses.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Thanks for all the work you do. I always envision SBA, while Native Women Lead, we're trying to lend up to those amounts. We have to fundraise for that and develop our own infrastructure, et cetera. But I always thought SBA was a really good pathway, especially for those entrepreneurs that need more than 50K, which a lot of our entrepreneurs in our community said they needed. I know there's folks in our community who want to buy commercial real estate, and I know that's probably an option through 504 lending. And please feel free to add these links in here. But there's a real unique advantage, and I think to what Natalie was talking about taking it in bite-sized amounts, getting your paperwork ready, and we'll definitely, from what we're hearing, try to design programming that can come along with you all in the journey, but also work with SBA to ensure that it's accurate. So I know I've done a lot of talking, but I just want to say thank you so much to Natalie and Jackson for showing up. I'm trying to see if I have any other questions. I think the big one for me is there's often a data blind spot with Indigenous people. We represent less than 2% of the population. We're still trying to figure out what the economic impact of Indigenous women entrepreneurs are. We know that 2/3 of us are the primary breadwinners, and I always say bread makers in our community. So we're the economic stabilizers. And that's why Native Women Lead has chosen to invest in Indigenous women, because we feel like that impact is tenfold. So I guess my last question is how do we ensure that Indigenous women are continuing to be included in the conversation? I know you said there's an open opportunity for open comment at Res. But yeah, how do we continue to keep in conversation to ensure that these spaces are also reflective of the needs of the community, knowing that there is some nuance there?
Well, I'll just start and say, insofar as I'm in my role, you have a champion and an ally in me, and that it's at the top of my mind, and in the forefront of what we're doing from an equity perspective in my office. So absolutely. And I can also go so far as to say that I know that that's the same sentiment that the administrator feels. When Jackson mentioned the administrator going to Navajo country and Navajo land, that was huge. And again, we're 2022 and it's the first administrator to visit the Navajo land. But we're doing it, right? So it's better that it happens in 2022 than has to wait again for 2026, 2028, whatever. And the team that is at SBA now, I feel very excited about their commitment to the intentionality. And so continuing to reach out to us and engage with us It goes both ways. So if you want to meet with us, reach out to my office and I'm happy to set up meetings. That you all know, we're always looking to connect with you all. But then also our women's business centers. Go to the women's business centers and engage with them and be a part of their community and ask them about their engagement around Native women communities and if they have them. And if they don't, be a part of designing, helping them to design something that supports a need that you have that is specific to you, or show up and raise voice and ensure that people know the issue about collateral, which I didn't know, that I just learned here today, right? So I think we all assume that folks know something about this and that, and sometimes people don't. And the more that people are hearing from you because you are showing up, the more they're able to establish initiatives to support you. And our centers are led by nonprofit leaders who are committed to this work. And Jamie and Jennifer, you all know, this work can be tireless. It can be, overwhelming. It can be rewardless at times. So I always say, you step into the gap that exists for what you needed. And in stepping into the gap, you also will get what you need, but you'll also help somebody else get over that hurdle too. And in my past life, that's how I built what I built. In this life, this is how we're building what we're doing together. And through you all being who you all are and being those rock star kick butt entrepreneurs that I saw folks excited about in the chat group, you're showing someone else around you, not even behind you, in front of you, to the side of you, around you, how to do it. And that's huge. And it goes very far.
Thank you, Natalie. Just appreciate you and appreciate the stance you all take and knowing that you have that lived experience and ancestral experience as well, right? Of trying to step into that space. Nadia asks, what would be the best advice for someone interested in starting sole prop who wants to transition to becoming an employer?
I always advise to build pricing to allow yourself to grow. When we first start, we get excited to be here, right? You're just like, oh my God, I made my first dollar. I'm happy to be here. People paid me. But as you get ready to start, and this is in the service business, you see this a lot. When you get ready to start growing, you realize, man, I'm only able to cover what I need to survive and what I need to get this done. I'm not able to grow because I can't expand. So if you start thinking at the beginning of how much you will need to start saving, to build the savings to bring somebody on, right? And it can start incrementally. Someone help you answer the phone and answer your email. I mean, let's be real. Somebody help you with your calendar. These are all the things that get us trapped up. And then we're like, I can't do this anymore. You know what? I'm going back to this. I don't ever want to see this business again. I missed another meeting. I'm embarrassed. I should just give up. So if you start right now by building a price point for whatever it is that you're designing that allows you to have buffer space to grow, that is going to be the biggest service to yourself, because it's that buffer space that's going to help you grow and get capital to grow, because they're going to see that you continue to have something left over in the coffers for your business. And they're like, oh, okay, so she could probably pay the loan back. And it could be whatever margin or spread your customer is willing to pay. But it's easier to start off higher than it is to go low and try to get high. Because people are like, well, wait a minute. She changed her price. Last week it was X. What is this? So you have to, stick to your big girl suit and command and ask for what. And when you get that client that's going to pay you what you're worth, you do a good job. And then you ask them for more people like them. I have a word. Jamie, you didn't realize I speak a word.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you.
Yes, that speaks to pay equity. We have to command our wage. If we want to close that racial wealth gap, we are going to have to ask for that wage. Add that buffer space. I love it. Thank you. I know we're at time. I just want to thank you all for your support and just being here and just this delightful conversation. It's great to know that SBA is going to support us and that intentional inclusion of Indigenous people and women. Yeah, thank you so much. I don't know if anyone wants to just come off and say thank you or chime in or come off camera, do a wave, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, this is Steph Poston, the owner of Poston and Associates, co-founder of Native Women Lead. Seeing a lot of my sisters on here, just wishing everybody the best of luck. This advice was amazing. I'm in that getting ready to navigate the federal government contracting space and excited. So thank you. All great information.
Thank you. All right.
I
Thanks,
just want to thank
everybody.
Natalie for doing this. Natalie is amazing. Like, if there's ever been a woman that has risen up as a champion for all women, and I mean all women, it's her. So she is definitely my soul sister for sure.
Thanks, Diane. All right, everybody. Well, I hope you have a great day. Thanks so much, Natalie. Thanks, Jackson, Allison, and Jennifer, the whole NWL team. Appreciate you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for your time and your wisdom.